Dean Martin was a full mood, not merely a singer or an actor. With a drink in his hand and a quip on his lips, he dominated Hollywood with a cool, composed demeanor. However, beneath that effortless attractiveness was a life filled with sorrow, loss, and silent anguish. He reached the summit, but it came at a high cost. Dean's story changed from glamorous to heartbreaking due to his convoluted love life and the untimely deaths of his son and then his cherished wife. Come explore the life, love, and subsequent sadness of the guy who gave rise to the tale, the boy from Stubenville, as we dig deep into his life. There were times when Dean Martin wasn't Dean Martin. On June 7, 1917, Dino Paul Crocheti was born in Stubenville, Ohio. His family was Italian. His mother, Angela, was born in Ohio to Italian parents, and his father, Gatano Croetti, was a barber. Dino was raised in a home where the only language spoken was Italian. Actually, it wasn't until he was 5 years old that he began learning English. As a result, Dino struggled academically. Other children teased him because he didn't speak English well. He felt strange, and his early school years were difficult. He then claimed that he simply wasn't cut out for school. People laughed when he stated, "I had a bicycle and I never missed a meal, but I was just too smart for those teachers in school." However, it also conveyed a deeper message. He didn't feel like he belonged. He had had enough by the time he got to the 10th grade. He permanently left the classroom and dropped out of school. That choice led him on to a very different route, one that was full of risk, arduous effort, and difficult jobs. Defending the future. Dino attempted to emulate his father when he left school. Dino had different ideas than his father, who wanted him to become a barber. To make ends meet, he took on a variety of menial occupations, including drugstore clerk, milkman, and gas station assistant. However, he was not excited by these jobs. It was boxing that drew his attention. Dino took on the moniker Kid Crochet and began fighting. It was not an easy method to make money. He claimed to have participated in 12 fights and won all but 11, meaning he only took home one victory. He didn't win anything, but the event left him physically scarred. He couldn't even afford the hand wraps that boxers typically wore, so he suffered a fractured nose, a scarred lip, and crushed knuckles. However, Dean's battles were not limited to the ring. He resided with Sonny King, another struggling entertainer, when he relocated to New York City. Both young guys needed money to live, but they were pursuing goals. They therefore devised a novel scheme. They created a sort of underground fight club out of their tiny flat. In their living room, they charged guests to watch them box bare-knuckled. Until someone was knocked unconscious, the fighting would continue. In one actual battle, Dean even defeated Sonny in the opening round. He knew in his heart, however, that this was not the life he wanted. There was no real future in being beaten up every day. He needed a change, but he was still unsure of what it was. From rooms filled with smoke to singing live. Even after he quit boxing, Dino needed a job. He found himself in an equally dark location, a hidden casino behind a tobacco shop. It paid, but it was against the law. He was a blackjack dealer and a roulette stick man. This is where the unexpected occurred in this world of smoke. Dino began to sing. He started out only singing for his co-workers, but eventually people started to take note of his voice. It was charming, warm, and silky. A local band's leader, Ernie McKay, was among those who heard him. He suggested that Dino join the band. Dino's life began to alter when he said yes. Inspired by opera singer Nino Martini, he started performing under the moniker Dino Martini in nightclubs throughout Ohio. He joined another well-known band leader, Sammy Watkins, in 1938. During a trip, Watkins gave him a piece of advice that would influence his future. Change your name to Dean Martin. He followed Watkins' counsel. By 1943, Dean was a full-time performer and resident of New York. However, it wasn't simple. To get noticed, he had to put in a lot of effort and maintain his image. He was creating a persona in addition to a singing career, and that character would eventually gain international recognition. Dean Martin's act grew in popularity along with him. He performed, not just sang. He always looked smooth and at ease as he walked on stage with a drink of whiskey. He gave the impression that he was only there to enjoy himself. However, he did not come up with such deed. Phil Harris, a performer who centered his reputation on being a hard-drinking, woman-chasing showman, was the model he imitated. Nevertheless, Dean customized the appearance. For that, his fans adored him. He was dubbed the King of Cool. However, the outside did not always reflect the internal situation. Dean remained silent. He was reticent to speak, particularly during large gatherings or parties. "Everybody thought I was big-headed and stuck up, and I wasn't," he explained in a 1967 interview with Oriana Felici, which is one of the few times he gave an explanation. "I don't know what to say to people. I didn't know how to speak good English." Despite his success, he still felt uncomfortable because of his early language difficulties. He frequently remained silent because of this. He was misinterpreted. In reality, he was only shy, but they perceived him as cold or aloof. Additionally, that timidity persisted. There were many contrasts throughout his life. He was humorous and confident on stage. He was silent and uncertain off stage. However, he never lost sight of his origins. He carried that combination of difficult upbringing and internal conflict throughout his life. Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. Dean Martin's career took a significant shift in August 1944. In New York, he met Jerry Lewis, a young comic at the Belmont Plaza Hotel. At the hotel's Glass Hat Club, Dean was performing when he saw Jerry and said, "Hey, I saw your act. You're a funny kid." That remark sparked a 10-year collaboration. Jerry and Dean grew close quite fast. They became a team by joining each other's acts. On July 24, 1946, they performed together for the first time at the 500 Club in Atlantic City. However, their debut was a failure. The club's owner, Skinny D'Amato, threatened to fire them if the following performance wasn't better, and the audience didn't laugh. They devised a fresh plan and hurried to the alley behind the club. When Dean attempted to sing, Jerry would pretend to be a clumsy busboy. Dean would hurl bread rolls at Jerry as he dropped plates and caused mayhem. The audience adored the crazy, goofy, and humorous performance. Their careers were altered by this new act. They performed slapstick, joked, and spontaneously created scenes. What made people laugh the most was that they acted for each other, not the audience. It became a larger act. All throughout the East Coast, they had shows. Their most notable early performance took place in New York's Copacabana. They were popular. Alongside well-known performers like Rodgers and Hammerstein, they made their television debut in 1948 on the inaugural broadcast of The Ed Sullivan Show, which was then known as the Toast of the Town. They brought on young authors Ed Simmons and Norman Lear to further polish their performance. They transitioned from nightclubs to radio and films with the aid of these writers. They got a deal with Paramount to do comic relief in the film My Friend Irma in 1949. However, the agreement included freedom. They were able to produce one film annually through their own firm, York Productions, thanks to their agent, Abby Gressler. They also maintained complete control over their TV, radio, and club appearances, as well as their releases. They made millions as a result. They were close friends, and Jerry Lewis noted in his autobiography, Dean and Me, that Dean was one of the great comic geniuses of all time. In 1949, when Dean remarried, Jerry was even the best man. But there were fissures developing behind the laughter. Even though they were successful, things weren't flawless when the laughter subsided. Their films were too similar, and critics began to gripe. Dean grew weary of portraying the same character in every movie. He wanted more. He began to exert less effort during their performances. In 1954, a picture taken while filming Three Ring Circus appeared on the cover of Look magazine. Dean was not included in the film, which also starred Sherry North and Jerry Lewis. The final straw was that Jack Keller, their publicity manager, claimed that Dean bounded onto the stage with the magazine in his hand. He hurled it at Keller and swore at him. Jerry Lewis recalled how Dean's emotions fluctuated. "Anytime you want to call it quits, just let me know," Dean once stated. The enjoyment had vanished. Dean no longer felt like he belonged on the show. Later, he felt like a supporting actor rather than an equal collaborator, saying, "Why the hell should I come in on time? There's not a damn thing for me to do." It wasn't until 35 minutes into Three Ring Circus that Dean began to sing. When he did, it was an old song spoken to animals called "It's a Big, Wide, Wonderful World." The once magical partnership felt one-sided now. Dean worked till the end of the contract while maintaining his professionalism. However, precisely 10 years after they first paired up, on July 25, 1956, they broke up. Dean left in silence, but he held his head high. Rat Pack life. Dean Martin, a Hollywood star, rose to fame in Las Vegas after splitting from Jerry Lewis. He became a member of the Rat Pack, a group of entertainers known for their sophisticated lifestyle. Dean was not much of a party animal in real life, but he enjoyed doing things his way. He had a close bond with Frank Sinatra and had tight families. Despite his troubled past, Dean's courage and charisma made him a standout performer. He was known for his drunken demeanor and garbled words, which some even claimed were part of show business. In the 1960s, NBC offered him a variety program, The Dean Martin Show, which attracted 40 million viewers. Dean's effortless appearance and easygoing attitude made him a favorite of Elvis Presley, who idolized him. Dean also adored comic books, even reading only Black Beauty. He even appeared in his own comic strip with Jerry Lewis, publishing 40 issues of their series, The Adventures of Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, between 1952 and 1957. Dean's charisma extended beyond his voice and his ability to make people adore him. Dean Martin, a renowned singer and actor, was a quiet star with a somber heart. His son, Dino Paul Martin, died in 1987 in an aircraft accident, leaving him devastated and distanced from Frank Sinatra. Despite this, the two men reconciled, and Frank Sinatra paid a heartfelt homage to Dean. Dean Martin maintained his modesty despite his popularity, TV appearances, and albums. He began The Dean Martin Show in 1965, which became a success and hosted the Dean Martin Celebrity Roast from 1974 until 1984. Dean Martin's voice became ingrained in American society with songs like That's Amore, Sway, Everybody Loves Somebody, and Ain't That a Kick in the Head still being heard today. He had a large family, and his first love was Elizabeth Ann Betty McDonald. After their marriage, they had 4 children, but the union was short-lived. Dean was granted custody of all 4 children and died in 1989. Dean remarried Jean Bieger, a model and former Orange Bowl queen, shortly after his divorce from Betty. They had 3 children together and raised 7 kids. Dean and Jean were among the most well-known couples in Hollywood, but their marriage ended in 1972. Despite their divorce, Dean and Jean remained close, particularly after a family tragedy occurred years later. Dean Martin, a Hollywood star, was known for his charisma and sense of humor. He married Kathryn Hahn in 1973, the same year he divorced Jean. After only 3 years of dating, they got married in 1976. Dean adopted Kathryn's daughter, Sasha, and raised her as his own. They never got married again, but Dean and Jean remained close, particularly following the tragic loss of their son, Dino Paul Martin Jr., in 1987. Despite their divorce, Dean and Jean remained close until his death in 1995 due to complications from lung cancer. Jean passed away in 2016 at the age of 89, and their musical son, Richie Martin, also passed away in August 2016. Dean Martin's life behind the scenes wasn't always perfect, with rumors, affairs, and one explosive secret. Sandra Lansky, the daughter of renowned mobster Meyer Lansky, revealed a startling tale in her memoir that Dean had an affair with him during Johnny's pregnancy with Gina, their daughter. Despite his seemingly serene exterior, Dean Martin's close friends and family saw a shift following his son's death. Author William Keck claimed that Dean was experiencing more than just grief, but a broken heart inside him. Dean's health began to deteriorate in 1993, and he received a lung cancer diagnosis. Despite doctors' advice that surgery could extend his life, Dean declined to receive treatment and left the public eye by early 1995. He passed away from acute respiratory failure